Welcome to Brainwaves and Breakthroughs.
Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dives into the world of clocks and watches.
Oh, cool.
We'll be looking at an article called Pasted Text.
Okay.
And I'm really excited to trace the evolution of timekeeping
Yeah.
from those ancient methods
Right.
all the way to, the smartwatches we have today.
It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
Most people don't really think about this,
Uh-huh.
but the way we actually perceive time
Okay.
really influences how we measure it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I hadn't considered that.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, think about it like this.
Okay.
Many Western cultures view time as linear,
Okay.
like a straight line,
Oh.
from the past to the future.
Makes sense.
And this leads to sayings like, time is money,
Right.
because it's seen as a valuable resource.
Right?
But in some Eastern cultures,
Okay.
time is viewed more like a cycle.
Mhm.
So they place less emphasis on rigid schedules,
Oh, interesting.
and more on the natural rhythm of things.
So does that mean
Yeah.
if someone has more of a cyclical view of time,
Yeah.
they might not be as concerned with being
Well,
precisely on
and
time?
it's not so much about not caring.
Yeah.
It's more about having a different set of priorities
God.
in those cultures. Nurturing relationships
Done.
and maintaining harmony
Uh-huh.
often takes precedence over sticking to a rigid schedule.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
before we even get into the invention of clocks,
Right.
I'm curious, how did people track time?
Oh, back then. Long before gears and springs,
Yeah.
people were incredibly resourceful.
Okay.
They used the natural world.
Right.
Take sundials, for example.
Sundials.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I remember those from a
Yeah.
school trip, I think.
Yeah.
How did those actually work?
Well, as the sun moves across the sky,
Right.
you have a vertical stick
Okay.
called a gnomon.
A gnomon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it casts a shadow.
Uh-huh.
And based on where that shadow falls,
You can tell the time.
and people have been using these for a long time.
A long time.
Right.
The ancient Egyptians were using them as far back as 1500 BC.
Wow, 1500 BC. That's
I know it's
a
crazy.
really long time ago.
Yeah.
But sundials obviously don't work at night.
Well, they did have moon dials.
Moon dials.
Yeah, which use moonlight.
Oh, wow.
But even before that,
Okay.
people used things like obelisks,
Mm-hmm.
even Stonehenge,
Oh.
to track the sun's position.
I guess those wouldn't tell you the exact minute,
No.
but you'd get a general sense of the time.
Right, it was very basic.
Yeah.
But it was a start.
It's fascinating to think about Stonehenge. It's we've always had this,
It's a basic human impulse.
this desire to understand time.
Totally.
So we've got shadows.
Yeah.
But what about when the sun wasn't cooperating?
Well, then they used water clocks.
Water clocks.
Yeah.
I'm imagining something very basic.
They were surprisingly sophisticated.
Oh, really?
They were used as far back as the 16th century BC.
Wow.
Places like Babylon and Egypt.
Okay.
They measured time by the flow of water
Oh. So
from one vessel to another.
so the more water flowed,
Exactly.
the more time had passed.
Yeah,
That's pretty clever.
it is.
But I imagine keeping that water flowing consistently must have been a challenge.
It was a challenge.
Yeah.
The Greeks and Romans,
Okay.
they made significant improvements,
Oh, really?
more intricate mechanisms
Oh, wow.
to make them more accurate.
So speaking of the Greeks,
Yeah,
didn't Plato invent an alarm clock?
he did.
Oh, wow.
It was a water clock alarm.
Really?
Legend has it.
Uh-huh.
He needed a way to wake up for his lectures.
I guess even philosophers need a good alarm clock.
They do.
So we've talked about shadows.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about water.
Uh,
What was the next big breakthrough?
the invention of mechanical clocks
Ooh.
in medieval Europe.
Okay, so this is late 13th century Europe. This is where things start to get really interesting.
Right.
So were these first mechanical clocks
Well,
what we picture today?
not quite.
Okay.
They were large tower clocks.
Okay.
They didn't actually have dials.
Oh, so how did they?
They announced the time by striking bells.
Oh, wow. So
Mhm.
a town where your day was structured
Exactly.
by the sound of the clock tower?
Yeah.
So how did these mechanical clocks actually work?
Well, the key innovation was the escapement mechanism.
The escapement?
Yeah.
What does that do?
It controls the release of energy
Okay.
from a weight or a spring,
Uh-huh.
allowing the gears to move at a controlled pace.
So it's like a brake.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making sure it doesn't.
Yeah, it keeps that steady and controlled release.
Wow. Okay, so did these clocks become popular right away?
Well, it might surprise you
Okay.
that monasteries played a crucial role.
Monasteries.
Yeah.
That's not what I was expecting.
I know, right?
Why monasteries?
Well, they needed to regulate prayer times
Okay.
throughout the day and night.
Makes sense.
So that practical need
Uh-huh.
really pushed the development forward.
So we've gone from like the sun and water
Right.
to gears and monasteries.
Yeah.
It seems like timekeeping has always been this like,
It's a combination.
yeah, a blend of human ingenuity and our changing needs.
Absolutely.
So then what happens in the 15th century?
Well, the 15th century sees spring-powered clocks arrive.
Ooh,
Yeah.
smaller, more portable.
Exactly.
So no longer just churches and town squares that have clocks.
Right. It starts to become more personal.
That's fascinating to think about.
It is.
How that must change people's lives.
And then during the Renaissance,
Yeah.
clocks became works of art,
Oh, really?
often highly ornate
Okay.
status symbols
Makes sense.
for the wealthy.
So I can picture these beautiful Renaissance clocks
Oh, yeah.
in these like grand palaces.
Exactly.
But this increased availability
Yeah,
must have had a huge impact on daily life.
it did. One major change
Okay.
was the shift from seasonal hours to equal hours.
Seasonal hours.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
So before mechanical clocks,
Okay.
sundials and water clocks often used seasonal hours.
So the length of an hour changed?
I'll give one of the time of year.
What?
Mm,
Wow. So
yeah.
an hour in the summer.
Would be longer than an hour in winter.
That's crazy.
I know.
So mechanical clocks brought about the concept of
Equal hours.
equal hours. So
Yeah.
it's the same length regardless of the season.
Exactly.
So something we take for granted today,
I know, right?
standardized hour,
Yeah,
was a huge deal.
it was a big shift.
It seems like from monasteries to the Renaissance,
Yeah.
mechanical clocks were really starting to change the world.
They were transforming the world.
Yeah.
And that transformation continues
Okay.
as we explore how these more precise clocks made their way into other aspects of life.
Well, I can't wait to hear more.
Let's dive in.
Yeah. So we left off with mechanical clocks starting to show up like beyond churches and town squares.
Right.
Did they become widely used in other industries?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
By the 14th century, we see them being used in grain mills.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Makes sense to like track work time,
exactly.
maybe scheduling shifts and stuff.
It was all about efficiency.
Yeah.
Managing processes,
Mm.
really starting to change how society operated.
Okay.
And speaking of changing the world,
Yeah.
let's talk about clocks in navigation.
Especially at sea.
Huge problem.
Yeah. It was a challenge for so long.
Centuries.
Can you explain what the issue was?
So for a long time, sailors struggled to determine longitude at sea.
Right.
Latitude was pretty easy
Okay.
using the stars,
Uh-huh.
but longitude,
Yeah. Yeah.
much more difficult.
Because you need to compare the time at your location
You got it.
to the time at a fixed reference point to
Exactly.
calculate that longitude.
And for a long time, that wasn't possible.
So what was the solution?
The invention of the marine chronometer
Okay.
in the 18th century.
The marine chronometer.
Yeah.
And how did that help?
These were super accurate clocks
Well,
designed to withstand the rough seas,
right.
became vital for navigation.
So now they could finally.
They could compare the time
Yeah.
at their location
Mm-hmm.
to the time at a reference point,
And that was usually.
usually Greenwich, England,
Okay.
and use that difference to calculate longitude.
So basically, by knowing the time difference
Right.
between their ship and Greenwich,
Precisely.
they could figure out where they were in the world.
It's like having GPS
Wow.
in the 1700s.
That's wild.
I know.
What a huge impact.
Oh, yeah. It made sea travel so much safer,
Right.
more efficient.
Makes sense.
New trade routes,
Mm-hmm.
more exploration.
Wow.
Even played a role in the expansion of empires.
It's incredible how something as seemingly simple as a clock
I know, it's amazing.
can have such massive ripple effects.
It really is.
Okay, so we've talked about clocks transforming navigation.
Right.
But what about that shift from clocks to watches?
That involved miniaturization.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Taking all those gears and springs
Uh-huh.
from a large clock,
Yeah.
shrinking them down,
To fit on your wrist?
or in your pocket.
Exactly.
It's an amazing feat.
Weren't those early pocket watches more about fashion than function?
Well, there's some truth to that.
Okay.
The early clock watches
Uh-huh.
back in the 16th century,
Yeah.
they were more like jewelry
Okay.
than
Yeah.
precision instruments.
Gotcha.
But the real turning point
Okay.
came in the 17th and 18th centuries
Uh-huh.
with the invention of the balance spring.
The balance spring. And what does that do?
This tiny spring,
Okay,
it's
yeah.
attached to the balance wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and it regulates the oscillations
Oh,
of
yeah.
the watch mechanism.
So basically it made them Much more accurate.
Much more accurate.
So a tiny spring made a huge difference.
It did.
So when did those pocket watches become wristwatches?
Well, interestingly, wristwatches were initially marketed toward women.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Mm.
as a fashion accessory.
Okay.
It wasn't until World War I
Okay.
that they became popular with men.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Like in the trenches, you need to be able to...
You need to know the time
Yes.
quickly
Yeah.
and easily.
Exactly.
And a wristwatch was perfect for that.
And the evolution didn't stop there, right?
Oh, no.
What happened in the 20th century?
The 20th century.
Yeah.
An explosion of innovation.
Okay.
Automatic watches that wind themselves.
Wow.
Waterproof watches for diving.
Uh-huh.
Chronographs for measuring time intervals.
So watches became more than just timekeepers.
Absolutely.
But wasn't there another innovation that came along
Oh, yeah.
that kind of threatened the mechanical watch?
You're thinking of the quartz revolution.
It's the quartz revolution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've gone from shadows and water
Yeah.
to gears and springs,
Uh-huh.
and now we're talking electronics.
Electronics.
Tell me more about this quartz revolution.
So at the heart of a quartz watch
Okay.
is a tiny vibrating quartz crystal.
A quartz crystal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when an electrical current is applied,
Mm-hmm.
it vibrates at a very precise frequency.
Okay. And these vibrations are what keep time.
Exactly.
Okay.
32,768 times per second.
Wow, that is fast.
I know.
So these vibrations are translated.
Into electrical pulses,
Uh-huh.
which drive a motor,
Okay.
and that moves the hands.
Wow.
Yeah,
So simple yet so effective.
it is.
Were quartz watches more accurate than mechanical watches?
Oh, yeah, much more accurate. We're
Okay.
talking seconds per month
Wow.
compared to minutes per day for some
Mhm.
mechanicals.
Okay.
And plus, they were cheaper to produce.
So they were more accurate and more
A
affordable.
winning combination.
Right.
It really shook up the industry.
So what happened to all those beautifully crafted mechanical watches?
Well, they didn't disappear completely.
Okay.
While quartz watches became the standard for everyday use, mechanical watches found a new niche
Okay.
in the luxury market.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So the very technology that almost replaced them
I know.
gave them a new kind of value.
Exactly. It speaks to that appreciation
Right.
for craftsmanship and artistry.
So those intricate hand-assembled movements
Yeah.
became even more desirable.
As symbols of tradition,
Uh-huh.
heritage.
So while all this is happening,
Yeah.
another revolution was underway.
Yes.
This time at the atomic level. Okay, so we've gone from shadows to water to gears to crystals,
we have
and now we're talking atoms.
atoms.
My mind is blown.
I know, it's amazing.
Tell me everything.
So the development of atomic clocks in the late 20th century
Mm-hmm.
was a giant leap forward in terms of accuracy.
Okay.
These clocks use the resonance frequency of atoms.
Hold on. I need a science refresher.
Okay.
Resonance frequency, atoms.
Atoms.
How does that even work?
So every atom of a particular element
Okay.
vibrates at a unique frequency. Incredibly stable.
Mm-hmm.
Atomic clocks use these vibrations to keep time.
So it's kind of like a perfectly tuned
Exactly.
microscopic metronome
Yes,
inside the clock just ticking away.
that's a great analogy.
And these are really accurate.
Oh yeah, incredibly accurate.
Okay.
They lose less than 1 second
Okay.
in millions of years.
1 second.
I know, it's mind-blowing.
Millions of years.
Yeah,
That's incredible.
it is.
What are these super accurate atomic clocks even used for?
Well, they're vital for scientific research,
Okay.
but they also play a critical role
Uh-huh.
in technologies we use every day.
Like what?
GPS navigation,
Okay.
telecommunication networks,
Right.
even the synchronization of global financial markets.
Wow. So this technology working at the atomic level
Yeah.
is really essential to our modern world.
It is.
It's fascinating.
It is.
And it seems like that miniaturization that we saw with watches is happening with atomic clocks too.
It is. We now have chip-sized atomic clocks.
That's chip size.
Yeah.
Wow. What could those possibly be used for?
The possibilities are pretty vast. More accurate GPS systems,
Okay.
even more precise telecommunications,
Uh-huh.
scientific instruments with incredible sensitivity.
So we're talking like really advanced stuff.
Very advanced.
Now we're getting into science fiction territory.
Right.
But speaking of the present,
Yeah.
let's bring it back to the here and now
Okay.
with the rise of the smartwatch.
The smartwatch.
Yeah.
It's like the culmination of centuries of timekeeping,
Right.
bringing together the traditional watch and the smartphone.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has a smartwatch these days.
They're everywhere.
What?
What are some of those features?
Well, they tell time, of course,
Okay.
but they do so much more.
Right.
Notifications from your phone,
Yeah.
fitness tracking,
Uh-huh.
sleep monitoring, GPS navigation,
Global payment.
global payments, the whole package.
From tracking shadows
Right.
to harnessing atoms.
To having it all on our wrist.
It's incredible.
And I imagine this evolution isn't over.
Oh, no, not at all.
What do you think?
Well, we're seeing continuous development
Yeah.
in design, functionality, connectivity.
It makes you wonder what's next.
It really does.
But before we get too far into the future,
Okay.
let's step back and think about
Yeah.
the broader impact.
The big picture.
Yeah, that clocks and watches have had on society.
It's been a profound impact.
In what ways?
Well, they haven't just measured time.
Okay.
They've shaped our perception of it,
Uh-huh.
influenced our work patterns,
Right.
changed social interactions,
Wow.
even impacted cultural values.
Can you give me some examples of how our perception of time has been shaped by these inventions?
Well, think about standardized time.
Okay.
Clocks and watches
Yeah.
made it possible to synchronize activities
Right.
across vast distances.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential for things like
All right.
coordinating train schedules,
Right.
running factories efficiently.
Yeah. So the whole concept of a work day
Exactly.
and punctual.
Tied to the clock.
Wow.
It led to a more structured and organized society.
Uh-huh.
And let's not forget the cultural impact.
Yeah, like luxury watches.
Exactly.
They're not just about telling time anymore.
They're about style
Yeah.
status
Taste.
and antique clocks.
Yeah.
Cherished family heirlooms.
It all goes back to that human element.
It does.
We've always been fascinated by time.
We have.
And this desire to understand it
To measure it,
Yeah.
to control it.
has driven this whole journey of innovation.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway?
I think the most important thing to remember
Yeah.
is that clocks and watches,
Uh-huh.
they've done far more
Okay.
than simply measure time.
Right.
They've shaped our world.
They really have.
They have.
From sundials to atomic clock, it's been quite a journey.
It has. And makes you wonder what's next.
Right, like what's the future of timekeeping?
Well, we already have those chip-sized atomic clocks.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll see them integrated into everyday devices,
Okay.
making our tech even more precise.
So like GPS systems,
Yeah,
accurate down to the centimeter.
exactly. Or financial transactions happening
Wow.
in fractions of a nanosecond.
That's wild. And what about those implanted timekeepers?
Oh, yes.
You mentioned earlier.
The future is full of possibilities.
Do you really think we could have implanted timekeepers one day?
It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility,
Huh.
but it does raise some interesting questions.
Yeah, like what?
Well, if we could implant a sense of time within ourselves,
Right.
how would that change our relationship with time?
Wow.
You know, our experience of the world.
It's kind of a lot to think about.
It is.
But it is fascinating.
It is. Technology is a powerful tool,
Yeah.
and we need to be mindful of its impact.
Right. Both the good and the bad.
Exactly. Just look at the mechanical clock.
Yeah.
It revolutionized the world.
That to the Industrial Revolution. Yeah, the concept of standardized time.
Who knows what these future innovations will bring?
It's impossible to predict.
So to our listeners out there,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us on this deep dive
It's been a pleasure.
into the world of clocks and watches.
A fascinating journey.
We've covered so much ground.
From ancient methods
Yeah.
to cutting-edge tech.
It's been really interesting.
And it all comes back to that human desire
Uh-huh.
to understand time,
To measure it.
to make sense of it.
Time is powerful.
It is.
It shapes our lives in so many ways.
And as we move forward,
Yeah.
it's important to remember
Okay.
that we have the power to choose
Right.
how we relate to time.
And how we use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So keep exploring, keep
Yeah.
questioning,
Yeah.
keep that curiosity alive.
Who knows what the future holds?
That's the beauty of it.
Thanks again for listening, everyone.
It's been great.